down to Mississauga here and say hi to the Izaak crew. And yes, what I talked about earlier this year was one of my passions, which is fly fishing for muskie. And part of that is making fluorescent chickens explode on my fly tying desk to get flies ready for toothy critters. So muskies being an apex predator, that you've heard the spiel, you can't go too big with flies for predatory fish, because they like things that are like half to a third of their body length. That doesn't scare them. That's what they're actually looking for if they want to put on some weight. But the big challenge fly tackle is not well suited to throwing out lures that one of my good friends uses when he's running conventional gear, called a pounder. It's called a pounder because it weighs a pound. And it's 20 inches long and made out of plastic and giant treble hooks all over it, and it works. So he'll take that out in Lake St. Clair, and he's a solid boy, and he'll be tired at the end of the day using his heavy-duty bait caster for that. I have a few lures that I've run out in that boat that's not a big musky lure. That's middle of the pack musky lure. So with flies, the limitation is what you can actually cast. And what I've also found is you don't have to go to the maximum for size. There is sort of a critical mass for size that once you get something that's full-bodied and about 8-9 inches long, that is going to be attractive to a predatory fish, especially if it has the right action. So you want to have, there's a couple of different actions you can have. There's the one that if you're in a boat going down the Saugeen, or actually I'm talking with muskie anglers from Virginia and from Wisconsin and from Minnesota and Michigan, they all maybe call it slightly different, but we call it the lazy S. And if you have your fly, when you strip it, it goes forward, and then when you relax, you give it a little bit of slack at the end of your hard strip, the fly turns around and just sort of gives a big tail waggle. That's what we call the lazy S, because it's kind of an S bend to the fly that really works well. There's another action that will trigger muskie sometimes. If you put a weight right on the head of the fly, when you stop it, you get a bit of a lazy S, and if it slowly starts to nose down and go downward, that's another trigger that it looks like an injured, vulnerable prey item. That also works for bass. That's why part of why the Clouser minnow is, if anyone tries to tell you that it's not the best smallmouth bass fly ever, then you get to say, okay, and disagree with them, but it is the best fly ever invented for smallmouth bass. That action is phenomenal, and it works upsized as well. And then the other one is what I call the dying quiver, or a struggling wiggle. Some of the flies I have will have a tight wiggle, so when you strip them, they'll have a quick little tail wiggle, and if it's a little bit less than perfect, it's perfect. That's one that, those would be the three main actions that I've found that will trigger muskie. And the flies that I'm tying, they can go from small to big, and there's different techniques that you can be your own artist with musky flies. And what my goal is tonight is I'm going to show you a few different techniques, and then you can get creative with the different materials. My goal is I'm going to tie probably 3 flies, and I'm going to talk more about the materials and the techniques than the actual flies, just to get the techniques to make these things work, and what I've learned throughout the years trying them out and tying them up.